Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. I am here in San Diego, California, just a nice breezy 2 hours down the road from where I live in Los Angeles. Just got home from the arena over at Viejas where San Diego State plays. Got to see some mostly terrible basketball, but one exciting game at the start of the day. We're going to talk about everything we saw in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And to do that, I brought on good friend of the program, Cole Zwicker. Cole, have you left your couch for 2 consecutive days?
No, man, I'm like seeing double at this point. I think I've watched 24 hours of basketball over the last 2 days. It's been great, but at the same time, freaking exhausted.
Well, I'm seeing double, but for a different reason. It's mostly because I had to watch Auburn-Charleston, where they turned the ball over 33 times, missed, I want to say, or no. They shot 21% from 3 between the two of them over the course of the entire game, and somehow all of that understates how terrible the game was.
Sounds like I made a good business decision there.
Yeah. Let's talk real quick, though, at the top. I got to see Jon Elmore just dominate this morning. Got to see internet sensation Aidin Penava early in the morning as well. Are you a Jon Elmore / Aidin Penava person?
I damn well am now. I mean, Jon Elmore is my spirit animal. That
Jon Elmore's
game
God.
was incredible.
He is God.
Dude, the pull-ups, the half-turn dribble moves he was doing all game, I love that dude.
It's crazy. Like, you watch him, and he doesn't have an incredible handle. He isn't overly athletic, doesn't have a quick first step. He just has the best feel for the game I think I've ever seen, in a college basketball player. It is insane. He reads things like three decisions before it happens. There were times where he jumped passing lanes where I didn't even think there was going to be a pass happening in that passing lane, and he just understood it and realized it immediately. He's something else, man. And the shot obviously is ridiculous. He's thrown pinpoint lobs the entire game. And that dude is for real. He is no joke, a very real NBA prospect.
Yeah, dude, he really blew me away. What did you think of Penava?
I have not been on the Aidin Penava bandwagon throughout the course of the year. I will say that seeing him in person made me a little bit more enthused. He's still just 215 pounds. He's very skinny. He's a little bit more fluid and athletic than I thought he was, and his instincts are incredible, and he blocks shots in the way that you would expect him to given his numbers, and he puts the ball on the deck even a little bit more than I thought he did. He's a lot more comfortable operating in space than I thought he was.
Yeah, his grab and go sequences were pretty impressive. He had the projectable shot, and his team D, I thought his instincts were really good. He was helping off Kelly a lot and just wrecking havoc in the paint. Yeah. I did think he looked a little slow in space at times defensively. There were a couple of possessions where I don't think you can play in the NBA. But I was kind of impressed for what the hype had been from the analytics guys who have reached out and been like, this guy is ridiculous. I'm not sure if I'm going to go quite as far as them, but he was impressive, at least to a certain threshold.
Yeah, I still don't think he's an NBA player, but down the road, in next year, if he developed another step forward and you told me he was in my top 100, I would not be surprised. He's actually quite good. On the other hand, Wichita State is not very good. I don't know how much that team enjoyed playing together anymore. They never clogged the holes defensively that they needed to. Landry Shamet took a significant step back defensively this year. I don't really know how else to say that. He had one of his worst games of the year, I would say, and it was a little bit scary just how much he blended into the background, even when his team really needed him against Marshall.
Yeah, he had a brutal game. I mean, there's no questioning that. I mean, the shots didn't go. I thought he got pretty good looks for the most part for him. I mean, when he gets airspace, he's usually pretty automatic. He's one of the best shooters in the country. He just couldn't buy a bucket. He had the 8 assists, but I just thought a lot of the reads were poor. He just didn't play composed basketball, and people were talking about getting pressed up with his dribble and his handle. I never saw him as a point guard. He's more of a secondary kind of combo guardish guy that you want to run off screens at a high rate. He's not like a pure point guard, so that really didn't surprise me that much. But yeah, definitely an awful outing for him.
Yeah, it was a weird one because I've generally been a fan of his, but seeing him in person made me a little bit more skeptical of him as a prospect. And like I'd seen him in person before, but this was a particularly bad outing for him. The other guy who balled out here while I was watching courtside was Javon Carter in the second game. 21 points, 8 assists, and he made life absolutely hell for Jonathan Stark, who was averaging 21.8 points per game for Murray State coming into this game. Just made life miserable. He had 6 steals, and that even underrates his defensive impact. He is every bit as freaky as you expect to see him be.
That's good to hear. I'm definitely excited to go back and watch that. I got that DVR. I want to see John Morant of Murray State as well, so I'm going to watch that probably sometime during this week. I won't be able to get to it this weekend, likely with the other games, but I'm amped for that.
Where is Ja? I need Ja! Like, I was so excited to just yell out Ja Morant. I got to talk to him this weekend, too. He is a very, very nice kid. Used to play on Zion Williamson's AAU team in South Carolina. Was like one of those kids who gets a lot of offers late for whatever reason, just isn't really picked up upon until like spring or, even the summer before his senior year of AAU, and ends up at Murray State, and it was a really great fit for him. And I'll be interested to see him next year without Jonathan Stark in the lineup with him and how that kind of how he kind of operates around that. Like I said, the other 2 games I saw today were trash. Clemson actually looked really, really good. Gabe DeVoe looked awesome. Shelton Mitchell looked really good. Their backcourt's awesome also with Marquise Reed. But I never want to speak of Auburn, Charleston again. Like that was the worst basketball game. I said on Twitter, I think that 2/3 of the AAU games I've seen live were better than the Auburn-Charleston game. I was not exaggerating. I wish I could have walked to an auxiliary gym. That's why AAU is better than that game, because at least when AAU is happening, I can just go over to the court next to it and leave and not watch the game that I'm watching, because that game, Auburn-Charleston, was the worst.
That's a terrifying thought.
Yeah. It just can't emphasize enough how bad it was. But everyone is talking about Virginia getting upset, and it wasn't really even upset. Like I was watching this with Mike Schmitz on the baseline while this entire, Auburn Charleston like mess was happening. Virginia just got boat raced by UMBC. They didn't have any single way to adjust to what UMBC was doing to them the entire second half.
Yeah, it was just a constant flurry of driving kicks. It seemed like they were getting an open 3 at will. Jarius Lyles was ridiculous in that game, getting to the rim, hitting threes. I've seen Virginia probably 4 or 5 times this year total, and I've never seen them so disoriented.
Yeah, I agree. It almost seemed like for whatever reason they lost mental focus almost, don't you think?
Yeah, it was that combined with, I think, just the confidence factor, because they're usually playing with a lead. They're playing with a lower score. When you get them down in the hole, like in the second half, I just didn't think they really knew how to react. They were just kind of stymied. Yeah,
and this is where I think losing DeAndre Hunter played a really big role, because when you have Hunter, who is very clearly their most talented player, at least, you had a guy who could create at least a good shot look, a relatively solid shot look, out of nowhere, because he's so good at attacking mismatches. He's so good at, just being able to create his own shot and shooting over the defense with relative efficiency. Without him, they didn't really have anyone to do that. Like, Ty Jerome is fine, but he's still Ty Jerome. Kyle Guy is fine, but for whatever reason, he didn't look confident tonight. And when that's going to happen, Virginia's in a lot of trouble, and we saw that against UMBC.
Yeah, DeAndre Hunter has an underrated face-up game. Like I watched him against Miami in that zone, and he was just attacking in face-up situations, getting to the rim. He can shoot a little bit off the dribble. Having a guy with that kind of athleticism and physical tools via his length that can get his own shot at times is super important. We see how important just having one guy who can get shots down the stretch of games is in this NCAA tournament. Even if you have to have the team, you have to have that foundation, but you also need somebody who can create a shot. And I just didn't think that anybody on Virginia was doing that confidently tonight.
Yeah, it's really tough because Like I like Devin Hall. He just isn't that guy. He's more of a role player. Ty Jerome wants to be that guy, but he's not that guy yet. So I don't know where Virginia goes from here. I think that the thing that scared me most was UMBC just spread this team out and ran spread pick and roll and like just totally carved up the pack line in a way that I really can't remember seeing. Like Virginia's defense is typically so polished and their gap defense is so strong, but it was nothing even remotely similar to that tonight.
I think the best way is what you phrased it. This wasn't really an upset. It was like a total bludgeoning.
Yeah,
if you would have not seen this, if you wouldn't have seen the seeds, you'd have thought that the better team won, to be honest. Like it was that much of an ass kicking, and that credits to UMBC too. I mean, that was a fantastic performance by them.
Yeah, like I'm very interested to see what Tony Bennett does to adjust here, because like I think that after this game, any team that has athletic guards like Jairus Lyles and the KJ Mara dude who, kept getting those little 3-point shots up. He was very small. He was like 5'9". I don't know. I've never watched UMBC this year. I'm not going to sit here and like joke about that. I don't know. But like guys like that, Jordan Grant also kept getting just wherever he wanted. And, at the end of the day, they did knock down 12 of 24 from three. But that's how you beat the pack line. You get penetration. You kick out for three. And I just wonder if the more teams continue to play Virginia, if they just get comfortable saying, we're going to spread pick and roll you to death. And, we're going to trust our guys who are athletic to get into the paint and to make the right reads.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really have nothing to add to that outside of saying that if I am DeAndre Hunter's prospective agent, I'm using this game regardless of if it was attributed to him or not. I think that just the fact that it dropped off this significantly, who knows what it would have been like if Hunter played. Honestly, it's hard to believe that he would make the entire difference, but honestly, it's also not unforeseeable that would happen. But I just think that that's an interesting kind of, debate when you're having a negotiation with a team or something like that. It's like, yeah, this is the impact of one guy who can make on a team, even though it's probably not true.
Well, I think it was just a totally different game if he plays. You know what I mean? Like he's able to, guard smalls in a way that Ty Jerome and Kyle Guy really can't. Like they only went 7 deep tonight. That surprised me. I figured they might try and go even a little bit bigger with like a Jay Huff or try and throw in like a Marco Anthony at some point, just to give them a little bit more depth. Like, I don't know. This was a beating. This was UMBC was the better team tonight and just wrecked Virginia's shit. And that is something that I think is going to stick in the craw of Tony Bennett for a little while, because it is difficult, I think. If you get beaten because the referees, call bullshit charges and, you feel like you didn't get a fair shake. Like that's one thing, right? If you get beaten because a team knocks down 15 threes and shoots 15 of 24 from behind the arc, you say, okay, they got hot from three. We lost by 5, break of the game. They missed 2. They still go 13 of 24, which is a ridiculous mark. We still beat them, whatever. This was an ass kicking. And that is something that makes me think Tony Bennett is going to have to make an adjustment to that.
Yeah, and I will just add on Bennett. I really appreciate his post game, was just all class, and that's something you'd come to expect from him. But I just like the way he handled that. That was a really, really tough situation. I mean, that's going to be a blemish on him and all those players, for the rest of their lives, honestly, because it's the first time this has ever happened historically. That stuff's going to carry over. So I just really appreciate the way his candor and like how he handled himself was. I don't know. I just thought it was pretty classy. Yeah,
Tony Bennett was, I don't know if he was the first like super, super high level coach I talked to, but he's one of them. He like when I first started at CBS, like he was one of the first guys that I reached out to, and I was writing a story on Malcolm Brogdon like 2 years before Malcolm Brogdon became Malcolm Brogdon. And he was just the nicest, most generous dude with his time. Very, very down to earth. Like what happened tonight does not surprise me with him. I don't think that we should be like lionizing him for it. Like, I think that
for sure.
it's great that he did it, but it doesn't surprise me. He's a genuinely good dude, and I've always remembered the fact that he takes time with people when he doesn't have to take time with them in a pretty significant way. But I mean, let's just not go crazy. His team got his ass kicked tonight.
Fair enough.
Let's go from one pack line defense that played like shit to another pack line defense that played like shit. Arizona, oh boy. Arizona 89-68 got their ass kicked by Buffalo. Buffalo's guards got wherever they wanted in this game. Wes Clark was ridiculous. CJ Massenberg just, was ridiculous against Rawle Alkins. Rawle had no recourse to stop him from going wherever he wanted on the floor. Jeremy Harris was also really good as like kind of a stretch four type in this game that caused them a lot of issues with their two center alignment. I mean, what do we make of this Arizona season where they had the prospective number one overall pick in the draft in DeAndre Ayton? They have two other guys that NBA executives like on differing levels, and Rawle Alkins and Alonzo Trier. They have a pro overseas in Deshaun Ristich. They have Parker Jackson Cartwright, a senior point guard. They had one of the best freshman classes in the entire country, and they end up falling to Buffalo again in another just total ass-kicking upset.
Well, I mean, it has to go first to Sean Miller. I mean, when you have all that talent and nothing really meshes, I think that's the story of their season. It's never really clicked for them, defensively especially. There's just no really communication. The lineups are always weird. I don't know if Ayton demanded to play the 4, and that's why you went to Arizona to play next to Ristich at the 5. I have no idea or give any credence to that rumor that's been circulating. If that's the case, I mean, this was kind of foreseeable, but there's too much talent to lose in that kind of fashion. So when you look at the season overall, I think every time I watched them, I wasn't that impressed. I mean, Ayton would have his big games as far as like, against USC or UCLA, Pac-12 tournament. I was never impressed with their overall cohesiveness. And I think that's what we saw manifest finally with Buffalo, which just took advantage of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Every time that I saw them, and this even goes back to last week, right? I was texting you last week, like how these dudes did not look like they wanted to play together while I was watching them live, and they were winning a very shitty Pac-12 tournament. Their lack of cohesion the entire year has been their downfall, and it was abundantly clear throughout the course of that tournament and abundantly clear last night that Sean Miller didn't really have the answers anymore on how to do it. Like, he had that press conference, I think, after the Colorado game where he went like Eric Cartmenez, and he's like, how do I reach these kids? And like, he had no idea, I think. It got to the point where he just didn't know what to do. He would throw out Brandon Randolph. He played Dylan Smith significant minutes this year, and Dylan Smith was not very good. I just think at the end of the day, he didn't know how to utilize these guys, and these guys didn't know how to perform in the scheme he wanted them to defensively, because they're just not capable of running a pack line, and Sean Miller ran it anyway. Like, Parker Jackson Cartwright is an effective defender for being 5'9", but he's still so small that he's going to get shot over. And Rawle Alkins and Alonzo Trier just aren't quick enough to cut down those gaps and cut down on the penetration whenever you have to help off of like your wing shooter to cut penetration into the middle. They aren't quick enough to get back out onto the shooter after the kick out. It's just not a situation conducive to running the pack line. And Buffalo took advantage of that. Buffalo just beat them up and down the floor and got wherever they wanted because they knew that Arizona's defense wasn't quick enough to react to what their guards were going to do.
You have to base your scheme around your players. If you already have your players intact, I don't think you can just place guys into roles that they can't fill. I mean, if you have an empty roster and you're acquiring people and players, then you can do that. You can be like, I want to run this game, then I'm going to look for this specific kind of player to fill that. And I know that's much more of a pro concept than a college one, But I think you see it manifest here as well. You can't just run any kind of scheme that you want and expect players that aren't capable of performing those acts to do so. And I just think that it all kind of, for me, goes back to Ayton. I mean, that's what everybody wants to talk about is how was he utilized? Was he played out of position? Was he put in situations that were disadvantageous? I think you tweeted last night that, his situation hasn't done him any favors. Maybe we see better defensive production if he's placed at the 5 in a different kind of system. So what are your thoughts on that?
So, yeah, like Arizona had maybe the worst, not the worst, but they were, in the bottom quarter of perimeter defenses this year in the country. And then you throw in the fact that DeAndre Ayton played the 4 out of position most of the year. He was put into about 1 billion situations this season where he was in significant trouble and he was trying to bail out teammates in a lot of ways. Obviously, you would like to see him react and help situations a little bit more differently and a little bit more positively than he did. But I think that he looked a lot worse at times this year than he actually was, just because the perimeter defense put so much pressure on him. That's maybe making an excuse for him, but I think it's a fair excuse in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at with him as far as that's the question mark for me is how much of this was scheme-based? Was he told not to help at certain times? I mean, I know for a fact he doesn't have great instincts. I've seen enough of him to know that confidently, that I've seen him 3-4 feet away from the ball and not rotate, and there's no excuse for that. But there is probably some element and some percentage that is based on playing the 4 and being involved in situations that don't fit his game as far as, defending on the ball, spread pick and roll, for example. He's at the 5. If you put him in front of the rim in drop back situations, they can be much more effective than helping recover, whereas positioning is not that great. So I get that. And there's definitely scheme-oriented things. And I just wish we had the answers to that. It'd make projecting him that much more easy. I mean, it's not going to be easy regardless, but just overall, I think the instincts aren't there at a top-notch level as far as diagnosing plays, reacting quickly, and that's what I'm worried about with him. It's just a question of how much should I be worried about him because of those things, and how much was scheme-based and how much was situation. Yeah,
and look, I'm not sitting here saying that he had a good year defensively. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to give that impression. He was not good defensively this year. For most of the year, I would say. There were some games he was really good against Colorado at times. He was good against Arizona State at times, I thought, dealing with their spread pick and roll attack. But at the same token, he had a lot of games where he was terrible defensively and was late reacting to what happened here. But I just think that he had a lot put on his shoulders defensively for a kid that is 19 years old and has never really been asked to defend at a high level, really. So I guess that what I kind of default to is that, to me, he's still just the safest guy at the top of the draft. Like, you can feel confident that this dude who is 7'1", 260 pounds, a freak athlete that rebounds the hell out of the basketball and has touch out to the 3-point line, is probably going to get you 20 and 10 a night. Now, how effective is that 20 and 10 be? How effective is his all-star level production going to be? I think that's the question. But whenever you're talking about, like, his floor being like 18 and 9, like, that's a ridiculous floor.
Yeah, and that goes back to philosophy, like we've discussed over multiple podcasts, is what you covet in a prospect. For me, I'm concerned about not his production and not his goodness. I think he's going to be a positive player, which you can't say about a lot of guys in the draft. I'm concerned the most about how it affects winning basketball. And when you look at a center that doesn't have high-level defensive instincts, and the guys he's compared to the most often, it's far-fetched. I mean, like, the Towns stuff, the offensive creation, Towns is on pace to be one of the best shooting big men of all time. Like, he's like over 42. He's like 42% from 3 this year. He's an insanely good shooter.
You know what the other thing is, too, and this was brought up to me by someone online. I forget who it is, and I'm sorry if you listen to the podcast, but Towns is like an all-time great big man at attacking closeouts. Like, he is so good at it, and we haven't seen that skill from Ayton yet.
Oh, yeah, and that was my next point, was the self-creation and fluidity on that. He can handle the ball much more coordinated. We've not seen that from Ayton, and that's like the biggest indicator I want to see from him offensively. And then you get the Embiid comparisons. He doesn't have the kind of instincts, recognition ability. I watched 8 minutes of highlights on Embiid in college last night, and I saw more rotations from him in 8 minutes of highlights than I have from probably Ayton all year, and that's not hyperbole. And then you get the Shaq, the Wilt Chamberlain. It's really hard because the guy is a physical marvel. I don't think I've ever seen anything like him. Somebody who moves like him, and then he produces like points and rebounds every night. He's a pretty damn good passer. So he looks like the total package. I just think you have to suss through all of that and just see, does this guy really have it as far as competitiveness, physicality? He can be a lot more physical for his size, in my opinion. Like, he can be so imposing. He could dominate. I don't think it's about motor, and that was the issue coming into the season for a lot of guys. Is this guy play hard? I think he does. I just don't think he has high level instincts. I don't think he has that edge to him. So when you're trying to distinguish between the top level draft picks and other guys, just for me, I just don't know if he has the instincts in several respects, the IQ, and I'm just not buying him as a generational player. But your argument as far as safety, as far as production and being a positive player, I totally get.
Let's move on. Let's talk about another guy who is considered to be at the top of this draft class. He just played tonight as well. I caught, I would say, half of Michael Porter's minutes and was markedly unimpressed by what I saw from him. You watching him a little bit more closely while you were on TV versus me, sitting courtside doing three different things. Did you come away a little bit more impressed than what I did? Because, he ends up with 16 points and 10 rebounds, but shoots 4 of 12 from the field, and I felt he looked relatively unimpressive in doing it.
I mean, he's a shell of himself overall. He just doesn't have the juice in his legs. He can't jump like he usually can. And his movement skills don't look nearly as good. He looks more stiff defending on the perimeter. He dribbled better tonight, at least, than his first game back where he was fumbling the ball. Tonight, he actually had a couple of grab and goes in big space situations. He had a couple drop-off passes that were interesting. But overall, he doesn't have it right now. He doesn't have the legs. He doesn't have the conditioning. He was being played when he was just dog tired. He passed the ball. He had an inbounds pass, passed it right to the other team because he was so tired late in the game. I respect him for playing, but at the same time, he was never going to really help himself in this situation. I don't think it's going to hurt like a lot of people do. His stock's going to tank. It's not going to tank. We've talked about this before. All the execs have seen him. They know that this is a shell of himself. But yeah, you can't really look at his game tonight or his first game back and say you're impressed because it's frankly just unimpressive entirely.
Yeah, look, the stuff on the floor is not going to hurt him, I don't think. The fact that he didn't play well, he looks heavy right now to me. Wouldn't you agree?
He definitely looks bigger to me. I don't recall him specifically at lower levels, but I think I agree with you.
Yeah, I think he looks a little bit bigger right now. Maybe the camera adds 10 pounds, like everyone says. But I think he looks a little bit bigger right now than what he should be playing at right now, given where his overall core strength and where everything is with his body mechanically. And then also, like I said, him going for 16 and 10, whatever, but he just kind of freewheeled and did whatever he wanted. I saw that Ken Pom earlier tweeted out that Porter took 43% of his team's shots while he was on the floor. That is a bananas number. To put that into perspective, Trae Young took a pretty fair margin less than that. Trae Young took 34% of his team's shots while he was on the floor. That's too much for Porter.
And a lot of them aren't good shots. I mean, let's just be upfront about that. They're pull-ups over contest. They're catch and shoots over contest. He can shoot over the top because of his size and his release, but they're not great shots. And, he's short on a lot. I think he airballed 2 more tonight. Just doesn't have the legs. And yeah, I agree. The usage was too high in those kind of creation situations. I know some of the narrative going around is, this guy kind of just goes off the script of the team and does his own thing. And that's how it's designed. So we can see the difference between the design plays and what he does, especially with Jonte, because he plays such within the scheme of the offense. I don't know how much of that is true, honestly, but it definitely looks like that on the floor.
No, I think he for sure, just kind of freewheeled and went off script. No coach is going to call 43% of his team's plays for a single player. You know what I mean? Yep. And that doesn't even account for the fact that, Porter took 9 free throws in this game, too. He was just chucking out there when I saw him, and it's ridiculous. And again, this isn't going to kill him. The stuff that's going to kill him is the fact that teams are starting to get a little bit worried about him off the floor as a dude not being a super great teammate and looking off into the crowd and talking about pointing out girls in the crowd while not watching his team play. That stuff gets around to NBA scouts. That is the stuff that I think is worrisome. The problem is, how much is that going to hinder his draft stock? I don't know. Like, he was someone who did have a very strong reputation as a dude coming into this year. So I don't really know how to contextualize it all, basically.
I think it all comes down to the medical, like what teams have access, how good they feel about it. He's talented enough where you're going to roll the dice on someone with, all green flags as far as I know, because he went to Nathan Hale, which is like 15 minutes from my house, and everything we heard in this area about like his relationship with Brandon Roy, all that stuff was sterling. So if he's pointing out girls in the crowd, I don't know if that's enough, or like all the stuff that's manifested off the court with this, being a good teammate. Like Ben Simmons wasn't a good teammate. Like nobody cares when the guy's this freaking talented. It's going to come down to the medical.
Right, exactly. I think that's what it's going to be. Still, it's worth saying, not a great last two games, not a great impression for Michael Porter. Another guy who ended up not exactly making a great impression late in the season. God damn it, by the way, I am on fire with these transitions today. Trae Young. Trae Young is still going to finish the year as the, for instance, like Ken Pom Player of the Year. But he really struggled in the second half of Oklahoma's game against Rhode Island, I thought. Rhode Island kind of put the clamps on him a little bit, and that's not really a surprise. They have a lot of guys, like Jeff Doughton was the guy that was tasked a lot of the time with kind of slowing down what Trae Young was doing, as well as Fats Russell, a 5'10" freshman who's just really, really pesky. Then they also had like Stanford Robinson they could throw at him in switches. Jared Terrell is a 6'3", 215-pounder with long arms who can really force the issue for guys defensively. What did you make of Trae Young going against a really tough physical backcourt in Rhode Island who could really get under his skin?
I thought he was fine. They started off, he was running off screens a little bit more. Like he had a dribble handoff three and a down screen three. Those were his first two 3-point attempts, and they both went in. I thought that's how they're going to utilize him more. Just nobody else can create anything. So then you start getting into these spread, pick and roll, drag actions where he's got to deal with hard hedges. He's got to deal with this full court pressure from four different defenders. You still saw the flashes, like that left-hand skip pass that he made in the first half was just unreal. Like he's probably the only player in college basketball that can make that pass. The behind-the-back drop-off in transition that Rashard Odom's missed. Transition skip to Christian James. Everybody's freaking out about splitting pick and roll, hidden heads, all this stuff that we've seen all year. And I thought he actually got to the rim down the stretch of the second half. A lot of that was open settings, like in transition, like he just beat guys to their spots. And I thought that was kind of promising. He did struggle. There's no question about that. And the defense was just poor. Everybody wants to point out that crossed-up possession by E.C. Matthews on him late in the game. It was real bad. Biting on fakes, not contesting on closeouts. The lack of strength is going to be an issue. He's a little bit risky. Because he's going to take something off the table defensively. The issue is how much. I don't have a lot of reservations about his offensive game like other guys do. He's not a dynamic athlete. He's not going to create separation at will. But elite handle, elite shiftiness. If you get him in NBA space where people actually care about a surrounding cast and give them some gravity instead of him having all the gravity, I think it's going to be fine. It's just, I was more impressed than a lot of people were, I guess.
Well, I think that the biggest concern now is more, like, I actually really trust him as a passer. I really trust him as someone who gains marginal separation. You know what I mean? Like, he gets enough separation. I don't know how good of a shooter he is. That's the significant issue, right? Like, he is the streakiest shooter maybe in college basketball right now, just given the fact that he went like a 100 game sample or a 100 shot sample shooting like 20% from three. And he went earlier in the season on a 150 shot sample shooting like 47% from three, or not that high, but like 44% from three. That's a huge difference, right? That's what scares me. I'm sure that it's somewhere in the middle of that, but that's a large middle ground to make for a guy that has as many other holes as he does defensively.
Yeah, the shot variance is going to be crucial. How he falls on the scale from like a 35% three-point shooter to maybe like a 43%. That's going to be imperative. I do think that he's going to shoot better in the NBA because he's going to have more spot-up opportunities, more off screens. He can actually play off the ball, be leveraged as a gravity threat. Right now, he's taking mostly contested, like 30-foot threes, and that's on the shot selection at times. But late in that game for Oklahoma, Trae Young shooting a contested 30-footer off the bounce, even if he's double teamed is probably their best form of offense. So
I agree
in the
with
NBA,
that.
that's not going to be the case.
No. Like, I don't really complain about Trae's shot selection a lot of the time, really. Like, it's hard for him. You look at what his guarded and unguarded, shots were this year, and really Synergy only measures it off of the catch. 37 shots guarded, 21 unguarded. So like 2/3 of his shots this year were guarded shots, right? Like you can kind of assume that that's what you're talking about. And I'm sure that off the dribble, it's probably even more than that because there's almost always a guy guarding on the ball. So it's really tricky, I think, to kind of nail down how elite of a shooter he is. He's very clearly a good shooter. There's no question there. It's more, is this guy something just slightly less than Stephen Curry, or is he, as he continues to gain strength and continues to gain the body mechanics that allow him to continue to repeat his mechanics more substantially and in a more cogent manner? Like, is he going to be able to continue to improve as a shooter? Is he going to be a 36-38% guy? Because if he's that, he's probably a little bit closer to Shabazz Napier than he is Stephen Curry.
Yeah, the shot, again, is going to be crucial as far as like how high it elevates up. I think overall, just the shot quality was the point I was trying to make, is that I think that's going to improve in the NBA. He's going to get better looks than what he got at Oklahoma, which a lot of them weren't good. A lot of them were low percentage, really deep threes, a lot of them covered. And I think he's going to be able to fit more than the scheme of an offense and have other gravity threats that are going to take all the emphasis off of him, like what he has right now. Like, he's being, sometimes in that game against Rhode Island, he was being zoned up against. Like, they would just help off a corner 3-point shooter, and they would put 2 extra guys in the paint. He has eyes on him all the time. That's not going to be the case in the NBA, especially during the regular season, where a lot of teams just don't play that much defense. Like, he's going to get good looks.
Right. Like, I'm not sitting here telling you like he's going to be Cameron Payne. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, that would be terrifying. But I'm at the point now where I have some real enough concerns with him that I would very strongly consider Shai Alexander ahead of him as a point guard, and it's probably worth kind of moving there next. We can talk about Kentucky, who had a really tough game against Davidson that they controlled throughout most of the second half, I would say, but ultimately ended up winning by 5. I would say Shai Alexander is still by far Kentucky's best player. He's their most impressive player. What did you take away from the Kentucky game?
Pretty much that. I think that he continues to solidify that he's the best player in their team. He's the engine that makes it go. Like, his drive and kick vision is pretty underrated. Split pick and roll. He had that really nice right-handed skip pass to Diallo in the corner. Diallo then didn't shoot. He passed that up and tried to attack off the dribble. But you just see his two-way play on that team, and just, he's the one guy that has direction. Like, he's composed in the moment. You can give him the ball and he'll create something. I don't think he's a top-level quickness guy, but he's got enough quickness to get by guys at the college level. Surely against Davidson, he gets into the paint and he has great vision. I think even if he doesn't profile as a pure point guard at the next level, if he's a secondary handler, he brings those playmaking traits to that position. He's really impressive. I've grown on him a lot as the seasons progress. I think that there are a lot of reasons to kind of doubt him. He just knows how to play basketball, man. That's the biggest takeaway. Yeah,
like, I kind of think he is now clearly a lottery pick. There's almost no circumstance where I would not take him in the lottery. Like, I would take him over Lonnie Walker. I would take him over Kevin Knox. I'd take him over Daniel Gafford, who I really like. And in the right situation, if I already had like a true point guard, I would probably take him over Trae Young, just because I know that he can play both guard spots.
I definitely agree with the first 3. I would still take Young, of course, but we've been over that.
Yeah. But like, the other thing is, too, with Shai, he is really, really good on both ends already. He had 19 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists in this game. But where he most, continues to make his impact is that he legit guards like 1 through 3 defensively for them. Like, he moves up and down the lineup, and he's really, really good at using his length to contest, and he's really good at fighting through screens, I think.
His length is just absolutely suffocating. Denying one pass away, he can really get in the passing lanes and just make life hell for ball handlers. I have a little bit of questions about his strength level as far as how switchable is he at the next level, but I think he's going to be an effective player. I just think he's really damn good. That's always my takeaway with him, is I know he's really good. How does he project value-wise? I think he's shown that. And this game was at least a good Knox game if we can transition to him. I like how Cal is using him kind of off baseline flex cut actions. When he shoots well off screens and he acts as kind of like this, we always see the usual runners, like as a slasher, he loves that floater game. But if he can really harness that off ball scoring kind of shooting role and play the four at the NBA, I think there's a spot for him. There's a little bit of Tobias Harris equity there. So it was a good Knox game. And I think if you get a good Knox game in conjunction with Shai playing the way he is, Kentucky's going to be kind of formidable in this tournament. Yeah,
Knox is really like the most unstoppable shot for Kentucky right now, I think, is Knox catching the ball on the right wing, taking 2 dribbles to his right and getting that baseline floater. That's a shot that he can make at a very, very high level whenever they're running down the shot clock, right? Like you still want to find, maybe a Shai look at the rim, or you want to find a PJ Washington dump off if you can, or like a quad A Green open 3 is still probably a more efficient shot than that. But if the clock is running down, like he's really, really good at getting to that spot, and you can feel confident he's going to knock it down with some efficiency. And having that go-to move really helps their offense.
Yeah, and he can shoot over the top, too. That's the thing with him is at his height, he can get to his shot. I'm not sure if it's going to be a quality look, but he can at least get a shot off when you need it. And again, that's something that just a lot of teams in this tournament don't have, that kind of consistency with a guy with that kind of height and physical tools.
A strong take here also, this was Hamidou Diallo's best game in a while that I've seen as well. He played within himself. He actually really kind of clamped down defensively a little bit. He looked like he might be able to play in the NBA one day.
Yeah, I agree. As the game progressed, especially, I thought at the beginning they were running him off some screening actions. He didn't really keep up with that Grady kid from Davidson, who I think is going to be pretty damn good in time. He was kind of trailing him around. He couldn't stay attached. But I thought as the game went on, he was fine. He wasn't the liability. It became like Quad A Green was kind of a liability. They were just shooting over the top of him. Davidson was headhunting him a little bit in spot-up situations. But I agree with you about Diallo.
Kellen Grady also, I did want to mention him. He's one of my sneaky favorites. I really just love watching that dude play. 6'5" out of Boston, 18 points a game this year, shot 50% from the field, 37% from 3, 80% from the line. I am a little bit worried about just like the athleticism and the length, but he knows how to get to his spots. He knows how to play.
Yeah, it was a rough game for him. I mean, he missed a ton of bunnies at the rim. The athleticism kind of shined, or the lack of athleticism shined there a little bit. And then the shooting, his shot looks really projectable. It just didn't go in for him that game.
Let's move on. Let's talk about Mohamed Bamba today. What did you think of what you saw of Mohamed Bamba against the Nevada team where he essentially towers over everyone on that team?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a mixed bag, as it kind of always is with Bamba. I thought at times he was pretty impressive. Everybody's going to point to him getting screwed with the foul calls, and yes, he did. Yep. I mean, the last call, I thought he went vertical enough. I don't know. I'm not going to get into it with the college refs. None of them are really that good, so there's no really point in harping on overly. But I thought he did some good things. He had some quick spins in the post. He had this reverse pivot baseline move where he skipped the ball into the opposite corner. Showed a little bit of feel elements there. What I didn't like is he allowed guys in Nevada to kind of box him out offensively in like the dunker spot, for example. Like he would just allow big guys to like rest on, or small guys to rest on his body, and he just wouldn't fight them off for position. So that's kind of stuff that I think execs are talking about when they're talking about his toughness level and it's just his competitiveness. Sometimes you just don't see it. Like he should be throwing those guys out of the way in a non-foul oriented way, just getting in front of them, establishing position, and getting a duck-in opportunity. So that's kind of the disconcerting part with him.
Yeah, a lot of it is on the floor effort. Like, I don't really think he plays that hard all the time. And that is the thing that's always scared teams about him. Like, he's not always working as hard as he can to establish position. He's not always working as hard as he can to read where he needs to be on defense as a rim protector. And plus you throw in the fact that he's not a great screen setter. He, can kind of lollygag around a little bit here and there. The physical tools are incredible. And when he decides to make an impact, he makes an impact. Like, no question. He is one of the most impactful players in college basketball when he really is playing hard and going. But when you're talking about a big guy, I am always scared whenever the flag is this guy doesn't always play up to his potential because he doesn't always work as hard as he can to establish the position he needs to.
he's a high variance prospect. I mean, his ceiling, we kind of know what his ceiling is potentially, but his floor is also a little bit lower than you'd like. Some of the defensive stuff in this game, it was hard to really pinpoint just because they kind of mixed up their schemes. They played some more zone against Nevada, so you really didn't know if his task, meaning Bamba, was to drop back. Like, he was dropping back on a lot of these high pick and rolls and just not even getting out on like a Cody Martin in space, wasn't challenging shots on pin downs, for example, wasn't contesting pull-ups. I don't know. That was just more probably the scheme-oriented thing, but he wasn't even making an effort to do that. So it was a mixed bag. He had one really nice rotation block across the paint that was, it just showed his margin for error. He doesn't have to react instantaneously. He can still get to his spots because he's so damn long. So I think the entire Mo Bamba package was on display. He had a good stat line. I thought he played okay.
Do we want to talk about Kerwin Roach at all? Was he interesting to you?
I mean, he made shots. It's just when you look at his overall game, you look at how narrow he is. He's a great athlete. It's just how much does it matter with his frame? Like, he couldn't carve out space attacking the rim. There were several times when he drove to the basket, he just could not absorb contact and finish. And then defensively, if you project him to the NBA, he could be point of attack. He has some twitch, but how versatile is he with his lack of frame? So I think he deserves to be on the radar, especially because of the shooting. And we've seen enhanced playmaking as the season has progressed. I don't know. What do you feel about him?
Yeah, I think basically that. I mean, he's a ridiculous athlete. I think he's a little bit better defensively than what you kind of, outlined, in that I think he's already a very good point of attack defender. But I agree with you. He's not going to be super versatile. He does give effort, though, and I think that matters. The offense, he needs to make shots like he did today, and that's just not something he's done in the past. So the other guy that's worth bringing up, though, is Caleb Martin. What did you think of him as he kind of continued to knock down shots and destroy Texas' soul late in that game?
He's always so unconventional to me. Like, his entire game, it works on the college level. I'm not sure if it's going to translate, but he was a monster in overtime with his shot making. He had one insane drop-off pass on the baseline. I like his game a lot. I think he plays the right way. He knows how to play, but as far as projection, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, if he knocks down 40% of his threes, sure. I think that's what he needs to be, though. He needs to really knock down shots. Let's move on to the last big game player that I wanted to break down here before he plays Villanova on Saturday. Collin Sexton played just terrible, I thought, for the first 30 minutes of this game, and still somehow ended up with 28 points. Just an absurd number for how poor he kind of played.
Yeah, it started with that fadeaway down the stretch when he had that contest, I think, over Robertson. And then he just iced the game at the line. He kept hitting free throws, and I think that's where you saw the points accumulate. It was a really funny game for him because he had some shots go in and out, but he also had a bank shot three go in the beginning. And then he had this shot late in the game, this pull-up where it hit the dead zone between the backboard and the hoop, and it kind of sat there and just rolled in. Yeah. It was a really weird game as far as his efficiency and stuff. I thought his passing was okay. He made a couple simple plays that I like. I really like when he makes the simple plays, just one pass away, stuff like that pass to Petty right before the end of the first half. And then he started forcing it a little bit. His drive and kick as far as skip pass was way over the head of, I think, Petty in the corner. So, yeah, I thought overall, I didn't come away from the game just completely, my head was blown away. This guy's been great. I think a lot of Twitter was this guy, oh, man, this guy's incredible. And it's yeah, he's a good player. When he makes shots, I think he's an effective player. I still wasn't, completely sold on what I was seeing. What about you?
I was very sold on the mentality and the way he went about doing it.
Yes.
Which I think is important in a lot of ways. He wants the ball at the end of the game. He wants to just steal the other team's soul and be responsible for knocking them out of a tournament. Having said that, he also just sometimes struggles to shoot it, and that's a little bit scary. He can get to the line whenever he wants. He is going to be able to get separation with ease. Sometimes the shot just leaves him. That's a little bit worrisome. I will say I was a bigger fan of the passing in this game than I think you were. I thought he was awesome passing the ball in this game. He really created a lot of plays for Alabama in a way that he kind of had no business creating them.
Yeah, the hit-ahead pass was my favorite, the one to Hall in transition. That was a really nice pass. I thought there was one drop-off where he had to Hall at the beginning of the game where three guys just ran at him. At least he didn't force something up. It was kind of it was fine, and I appreciated him doing it because there's been times this year where he, like we talked about before, he just over-penetrates. He's not even looking. I think he was looking a little bit more in this game. Yeah,
he didn't get tunnel vision-y, which is really important for him, I think. Do we care about anyone else in this game?
I mean, Petty, I thought, won the game with his shooting, honestly. Like, if he doesn't show up in that game and shoot threes, Sexton was their best player, but I think Petty, like, they just needed that input from somebody else. Nikhil was up and down. He had a really nice blow-by of Petty in space late in the game. Was actually trusted down the stretch, which is something you've harped on several times. But overall, I just don't think he's ready. Also thought Chris Clark made a couple of really nice passes. But I really like his game. I just don't know if he's, of course, an NBA player, but maybe he gets a flyer at some point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Let's move on. Let's talk about just a few little rapid-fire topics here. Miles Bridges went for 29 points tonight against Bucknell. He looked just awesome. He looked like the aggressive Miles Bridges that I think everyone was expecting this year. Any strong thoughts on Miles Bridges after the way he decimated an overmatched Bucknell team?
Yeah, I mean, he was utilized in the post a little bit more as a self-creator, just shooting over the top, utilizing his frame in like a Bonzi Wells kind of fashion. I talked a lot about his shot diversity increase this year. I wrote a piece on that as far as his pull-up jump shooting. I think he's just made tremendous strides there. So you could kind of comfortably project him to shoot, maybe not at a high level in multiple ways, but I think he's fully capable now, and that's just good to see.
Keita Bates-Diop had a, I don't even want to call it a matchup with Mike Daum because they didn't end up guarding each other as much as I kind of thought they would. He mostly guarded Reed Tillinghausen, which is, somewhat favorable matchup for him. But Mike Daum goes for 27 and 6. Keita Bates-Diop goes for 24 and 12. Overall takeaway from that game.
I love that guy's name, Reed Tillinghausen. That's freaking bomb. That's my number one takeaway. Number two is I really was hoping to see him more in space defensively. And like you noted, he was mostly in help coverage, which he was great at Team D, in my opinion, in this game. He was where he needed to be. He made the right rotations, but it was mostly like on the weak side or on the perimeter on the wing. I wanted to see him in like pick and pops against Dom. We saw him a little bit in space. He did switch on to King, their point guard. And he stayed close enough to kind of inhibit drives, but it didn't seem like against an NBA caliber point guard he'd be able to contain penetration there. And then Dom ran through him twice in space. But overall, he was impressive. He had to take a lot of shots in this game, a lot of contested hard looks. Like, he had a pin down curl shot over the top. We saw the trail threes. Took some shots off the dribble that aren't high percentage. But yeah, I was impressed. I mean, I really amped for the game tomorrow with Gonzaga and Tilly and Rui, and that's something I should have mentioned with Sexton too. Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson tomorrow. Those are two really awesome matchups. You guys watch. If you guys hear this by then, definitely watch both of those matchups. They're key. First, I just want to point out, Reed Tillinghausen sounds like the name of the evil Republican senator on the West Wing, and I don't know how to feel about that. Just going to throw it out there. The second part is that Keita Bates-Diop was the reason they won this game, just full stop. And I am so fascinated to see him play against Gonzaga again. Gonzaga wiped the floor with Ohio State at the PK80, 29-point win, I think it was, 86-50. Maybe it was like a 27-point win. I don't know. It was a beating though, and as you mentioned, Gonzaga has a really athletic front line, and I think that they can cause Bates-Diop problems in a pretty significant way because they can keep just throwing bodies at him. Jonathan Williams is one of the best defenders in the country. Killian Tilly is a really, really smart defender. Rui is a freak athletically. Like they can just throw bodies at Bates-Diop in the way that a lot of teams really can't. Yeah, I agree. It's going to be one of the most fascinating matchups of the tournament for me. Really quick about South Dakota State. What are your thoughts on Dom? He actually has a couple fans on Twitter as far as maybe a potential NBA route. I mean, his release is just ridiculous. That's all I can really say about him. I mean, he's now taken like 500 threes over the course of his college career and knocked them down at, I want to say, like a 43%, 42% clip. It's ridiculous. Like, he is. That'll do. Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's an NBA athlete. I think you're going to have significant problems with him defensively at the next level, but we'll see. I mean, it's another interesting part of him is he is apparently going to graduate this summer, and I would love to see him play high major basketball next year. I think that's, I don't know if he wants to go that road. I don't know if he is interested in trying to prove himself at a higher level. I don't know if he thinks he needs to do that. Maybe he's very happy at South Dakota State. I would love to see him at a high major level going against better athletes every single night. I think that would tell us so much about his game. I'm definitely here for it.
The next point of emphasis I want to bring up, DeMarcus Simonds from Georgia State. He dropped 24 today against a really, really good Cincinnati defense. He had Georgia State's first 16 points. He was beating Cincinnati by himself for like the first 10 minutes of this game. And then eventually, the hot streak cooled down. But he was really, really fun for the first little while here.
He was supernova hot. I mean, he was hitting the pull-up threes. He mostly beat switches. Like when Cincinnati would switch and pick and roll, he would either shoot over the top or shoot floaters. He beat Jacob Evans twice in space off the bounce, got him 2 fouls on him, and kind of took Evans out of the game. Cooled off late, but he can really get downhill. It's worth noting, though, that the shot making today off the dribble is not really representative of overall, at least a sample this season. He's in the 10th percentile in pull-up jumpers this year in the half court. So maybe a little bit of a mirage, but he was impressive. I mean, physically, he looks like kind of a less athletic Tyreek Evans to me, as far as stylistically a little bit, gets downhill, has some passing vision. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, Cincinnati's just too good. I mean, they out-rebounded them, Georgia State, by 20 today. 20 offensive rebounds. Evans had a slow game, made a couple threes late. He also airballed too. It was really weird. Cumberland was awesome. He had 27 in this game. He actually kind of won them the game and kept them in it when everybody else was really cooled down. Yeah, I mean,
Simons' problem is that he gets turnover prone, he gets sped up, and he can't really shoot. He did go 3 for 8 from 3. That was really important in this one. I think that he made at least 2, if not all 3 of them in that like early burst. So I think he went like 0 of 5 or 0 of 4 in the last like 30 minutes of this game from 3. He is a ridiculous power athlete, though. And those are the kind of athletes that I think actually have a future and have like a very real chance in the NBA. The guys who are physical, who are explosive, but also powerfully built and explosive. He just embraces contact like it's nobody's business. Like he just goes up through it like nothing's touching him.
Yeah, that's a great point. He definitely did that a couple times in this game. I have noticed the same turnover issues. I watched a couple of his games against Tukey Brown and Georgia Southern, and those are clear issues. I think he had like 8 or 9 turnovers in one of the games. So the decision-making might not be there, but he's definitely on the NBA radar after this game especially.
Yeah, I mean, he's been there all year for sure. Like NBA folks have known about him for a while. He has fans. He has a lot of dissenters as well, I would say. Lonnie Walker had a very, very rough end to their loss against Loyola. He lost 2 shooters to get Loyola kind of back into the game, and then he also turned the ball over in the last seconds to allow Loyola to get that last possession and knock down the shot that advanced them into the round of 32. Lonnie Walker's potentially last college game, I would imagine. What do we think of the Lonnie Walker experience as it went down at Miami this year?
I think that was it was definitely a rough ending, like the last couple of possessions, but I think the overall game was kind of a microcosm of what we've seen all year. I mean, I just don't see him playing with a ton of purpose when he's out there. It's not like he's a bad player. I think he's fine, but he'll kill his dribble for no reason. He has some awkward pull-ups that just don't really make sense in the scheme of the offense. I mean, of course, the missed free throw and the turnover at the end, but you see the positive flashes. We've talked about his mechanics being compact. I think he's going to shoot. He's going to shoot off the dribble, maybe a little bit off movement. He saw a little bit of the craft as far as his athleticism attacking closeouts. I think that's all there. I just kind of worried about his team defense, like his lapses there. He'll ball watch. He's in no man's land, but he makes good plays too. Like he'll rotate and he'll challenge shots at the rim at times. And you're just like, he's just kind of inconsistent. And I'm just not sure if the intelligence and the IQ is there, but the athleticism and the skill level outside of the handle, which I think is a little overrated as like a palm dribbler. He doesn't have great control, but if he's going to shoot and spot up and attack closeouts, I think he can do that.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried with him in a lot of ways, much for the same reasons you are. So he shoots 34.6% from 3 this year. He takes a lot of tough threes, so I think that number's probably a little bit low for what his true shooting level is. Yeah. He does kind of need to be a real knockdown guy, though. Like he needs to be like a 38 to 40% 3-point shooter at the NBA level from the NBA line, because, as you mentioned, he's not great. Is like anything else other than an attack closeout straight line driver guy. His passing is not all that impressive to me, to be honest. The defense is very hit or miss depending on the night. he's still very, very young, and he very clearly has a skill set that is going to translate to the next level in some way. I don't know if I would love taking him in the lottery, though.
Yeah, I have him 22 on my board for that exact reason. I think you can make a case a little bit higher, but I am trepidatious about some of his abilities translating. I think he can switch. He's pretty solid laterally. He has the good frame, but he's also 6'4.5". How many impact 6'4" guys defensively are there in the league? We're talking true value. So with me, it's like I think he can shoot. I think his shooting percentages this year are a little bit undersold. But he's got to shoot the hell out of the ball, I think, to have legitimate value in this draft.
I threw Rob Gray at 100 on my last NBA draft big board, mostly just for the hell of it, because I love Rob Gray's game. He's also 24 years old. So I doubt there are any other NBA teams out there that have him at that level. Maybe there are. Maybe he has some really big fans out there. I've yet to talk to them, though. Rob Gray goes for 39 against San Diego. How awesome is Rob Gray? That dude is just an absolute freak when it comes to wanting the ball at the end of the game.
And that's the only time I saw the game yesterday was at the end of the game when he wanted the ball and he hit that pull-up three, and then he had that ridiculous up and under touch finish. So I was intrigued. I have probably 4 games of Houston on my DVR I can't get to because of this onslaught of tournament and stuff. So hopefully I'm going to get to it this week. But he seems at least somebody that should be on the radar, maybe probably a G League guy. But if he can shoot the ball off the dribble, and he showed enough attacking as far as slashing on ball to get to the rim and a little bit of craft there, that's kind of intriguing. Texas
Tech escapes Stephen F. Austin 70-60. That game was much closer than what the final score was. Zaire Smith broke the internet with a 360 lob dunk that I thought was kind of sneaky overrated. Kind of a hot take there, I guess. But I'm an authority dunk guy. I want guys who really throw it down. If I'm going to have a dunk of the year candidate, it needs to be with power. That was more of a 360. He just got his hands up over the rim and kind of laid it in. Keenan Evans, though, won them that game at the end. That kid is just so tough. He is the epitome of a shot maker and the guy you want to have the ball at the end of the game.
Speaking of power dunk, did you by chance see that LeBron dunk over Nurkic?
Oh, my God. I was sitting down at Yard House last night with Jeff Grammer, and he's like, did you see this dunk? And I was like, no, what are you talking about? And then I saw it, and I was like, oh, my God, he caught him flush. And then I looked again, and I realized, Nurkic kind of turned, but he just dunked all over his face.
I think I watched that dunk 200 times when I saw it. I just could not get enough. It was just the most ridiculous play. LeBron's just another level, man. We've said that so many times. But yeah, Keenan Evans is a guy I've said multiple times I will trust part of my life too. I just love having the ball in that guy's hands down the stretch of games. He's so composed, gets to the rim. And I agree, the Zaire dunk, for him, I've seen him make more impressive plays. It was a sick play. For a 6'5" guy to do that and have that kind of in-air body coordination was ridiculous. But I've seen him make probably more impressive plays this year.
Another guy that I didn't put on our list here is O'Shea Brissett. He goes for 23 and 12 in their opening round game against Arizona State. Was basically the reason they won. He goes for 15 and 9 in their upset win over TCU. He is a guy that I love. I am a huge O'Shea Brissett fan. I've been saying basically since early last year that I thought he would make a very, very real impact on Syracuse this year. He's better than what I thought he would be. He does still need the jump shot, but he is a very real player.
Is he from Canada?
He is from Mississauga.
Okay, yeah, I've seen him at a lower feed level. I think maybe U16s or something, and I was impressed. I have noted him there. I've not watched him closely this year, so he's definitely someone I'm going to watch over the next couple days.
Yeah, 15 points, 9 rebounds a night for him at Syracuse this year as a freshman. Really, really talented kid. Does still need to shoot it and isn't super explosive, but has the body, has the frame. I think he's going to make an impact for sure. Cole, did we hit everything else? Did we hit everything we need to talk about? I'm delirious at this stage.
I'm getting there. I'll just do a quick note on TCU Syracuse because I watched that. TCU just could not figure out Syracuse's zone at all. It was just horrendous execution. Kenrich had some nice cuts and slashes, but so passive at the last part of the game. Just didn't want the ball, and he's not that kind of player. So that's something to monitor. That game overall was just kind of a tire fire. I can't stand watching Syracuse. That's why I haven't seen too much of Brissett. Just the zone and just stylistically, I just can't do it.
So it's funny. I hit TCU pretty hard in that game, like betting them, because in his career, Jamie Dixon has mostly not had problems with the Boeheim zone. Like, I think he's 15-6 now, 15-7 against Boeheim in his career, and TCU had the 6th best assist rate in the country coming into the game. And in the little bit of that game that I've now seen, I didn't watch any of it live, but now seen just highlights of while I was eating dinner here, I was surprised. I did not think that there would be that much stagnation in a Jamie Dixon coached offense against his own.
Yeah, I picked TCU in my bracket. I thought that they were going to win that game just based on their ball movement. I thought they had enough IQ players, enough shooting to get by with their offense. Just didn't materialize, man. It was painful. Yeah.
Any other standouts that you want to mention?
That's it. I think just to harp on some of the matchups again for tomorrow with Villanova, Alabama, I hope Mikal Bridges defends Sexton. I think it might be Brunson. I'm not sure, but that would be really fun. And then the Killian Tilly, Kaden Bates Diop matchup is another one. You just must see stuff if you follow the draft. These are really high profile matchups.
Yeah, both of those are going to be great. I would also point out Rhode Island Duke. Rhode Island's going to be a really fun matchup for Duke because they're going to start 4 guards and Duke's going to start 2 7-footers. And we're going to see how that goes. Yeah, the game is Alabama-Villanova. It's the first game of the day. I'm probably going to be driving back to LA because it's Laura and I's anniversary tomorrow. I will be watching very little basketball throughout the course of the day. But I'll catch up on Sunday. Cole, tell the people where they can find your work.
As usual on thestepping.com, we just updated our player rankings, so make sure to venture over there and give us your negative feedback. And as usual, continue to listen to this podcast.
Thank you all for listening. I got to get out of here, man. My body is like dying a slow, painful death. So until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.